Hi everybody, John Morris. I'd like to introduce you to Baylor's new offensive coordinator. Coach Jeff Grimes is here on the Baylor campus as we record this. And Coach, welcome to Baylor. We are glad you're here and glad you're a part of the Baylor family.
Man, thanks so much. I could not be more excited than to be in the position that I am right now, and just grateful for the opportunity to be here, for Coach Daveranda and Matt giving me the opportunity to come back home, really, for me.
You mentioned come back home. You're a native of Garland, Texas, right up the road, outskirts of Dallas. Is that part of the allure of coming to Baylor, is getting back in the state of Texas?
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I've already checked. My mom is 110 miles from where we sit right now, and so an opportunity to be close to family, and really all of my roots are in Texas. Lived in Texas somewhere until I was 30. Cut my teeth in coaching, high school football, graduate assistant, Division III coaching, and really spent the better part of my life somewhere in Texas. And then even since then, when I've coached other places, I've recruited Texas. And so just so many, not only family, but friends and coaching colleagues that I've heard from and just excited to be close to.
Good. I told you earlier, my dad lives in Garland and knows your mom up there from church and other things. So it's a great connection there. I'm sure she is glad you were back a lot closer to home.
Yeah, I think she cried when I told her I was coming here, because grew up just with a real fondness for Baylor. I grew up in the Baptist church and came to church camps here in the summer, and came to football games on this campus. And a good friend of mine is Neil Jeffrey, who's not only a friend but a mentor of mine. I worked for him one summer as an intern in his youth department, and got to know more about Baylor just in working for Neil. But just a real strong affinity in my life for Baylor and what it stands for, and for what a great fit this is going to be for me and my family.
Boy, that's great. You're talking Baylor football royalty when you mention Neil Jeffrey, so that is great. What about Baylor? I can tell you know Baylor. You know what Baylor stands for, and I think that was part of the reason that you were interested in this job as well.
There's no question that it is, and I feel like I've been so blessed to be in the position that I'm in. I view coaching as a calling more than just a job. I do love what I do. I absolutely love football. There's something deep inside my soul that resonates with the sport and what it taught me. But really, I guess the best way to put it is, I think God used the sport of football to make me who I am. And it's been the vehicle for most of the greatest lessons that I've learned in life. And a favorite verse of mine, we kind of call it our family verse, Colossians 3:23 says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men." And when I was involved with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, somebody shared that verse with me, and it changed my life. And the way that I look at it is, God's given me the opportunity to do something that I love for a living. My job is to do the very best I can at it. And I'd like to share that with our players all the time. And, the players, they ought to go out on the field and play the game in such a way that God looks down on them and smiles and says, yeah, I gave the talent to the right man right there, because he's making the most of it and he's doing what he's called to do. And so I just hope that I can do that in coaching. I hope that I can do it in a way that pleases God and makes an impact for him.
Wow, that's a real calling. We'll talk football. Folks watching want to hear you talk football and learn about your philosophies there. But tell us about your family, your wife Sherry, and 2 sons and 2 daughters.
Yeah, my wife's the real all-star, and she's the athlete in the family. I just say that I contributed size to the gene pool. She actually played college volleyball down the road at Texas A&M, and she's a native Texan also, and all her family is still here, and she's the real glue that allows me to do what I do and for us to have a successful family. And she's an amazing woman, and involved wherever we go. She's involved in small groups with college girls, and just gets plugged into the players' lives right away. And there was a time in my life where I felt like the rigors of coaching college football and being a good husband and being a good daddy were kind of pulling against each other. And I had a real hard time coming to grips with that for a bit. But then when I kind of figured it out, I recognized that if I bring those two things together, then it makes more sense for everybody. And so having the players get to know my wife and my kids, and then vice versa, and them being up here and all that stuff, just trying to blend all that together has really what's made sense of it for me. And my wife is the biggest part of that. Then got 4 kids, got a daughter, Baylor, who plays volleyball at Southern Nazarene University in Oklahoma. Got 2 boys. Garrison is a senior in high school right now, and Graydon, my younger boy, is a freshman in high school, and then we've got a little girl who's 11 named Jada.
That is great. Great family. We got great volleyball here at Baylor. I don't know if you know, we got one of the best programs in the country, so Sherry's going to enjoy that, and Bailey's going to enjoy that, so good volleyball program here as well as football. What about coming to the Big 12 Conference? You were at BYU most recently, an independent in football, but what about the Big 12? What do you know about the Big 12, and what do you think about the competition you'll face here?
Well, interesting. So I was a graduate assistant in 1995 at Rice, the last year of the Southwest Conference. The following year, I went to Texas A&M as a graduate assistant, the first year of the Big 12. And so I guess you could say I've been around it to some extent since its inception.
That's true, yeah.
And then I coached at Colorado for a couple of years when they were a part of the league. But I think I feel like I've been around the Big 12 and grown up around the Big 12 more than I really have, just because of my affiliation with Texas and so many people here. But have always, it's kind of funny, my wife and I were talking just a few weeks ago before this job even came up, and we were watching college football on a Saturday, and a couple of Big 12 games were on, and I said, you know what, that still feels like home, And every time I come back to Texas, as soon as my feet hit the ground at the DFW airport, it feels like home. And so the Big 12 is a part of that for me. When I watch games on Saturday, there's always been a strong affinity for me with the schools in this conference, because it's a part of the football that I grew up with, and just an immense respect for the game and the way that it's still played. And I think the game is, particularly in Texas, but in this region of the country, something that's a part of our culture, part of our identity.
Congratulations on a great year you and the BYU Cougars had this past year. Terrific season. A lot of folks think BYU would fit well in the Big 12 Conference, but a great season, especially offensively, 3rd in the nation in scoring, 43.5 yards per game, 7th in total offense, 8th in passing offense. You had a really, really potent offense there, a part of a really great team at BYU.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Great players make great coaches, and so that was a big part of it. But really, I think this year was a culmination of what we've been building there. I got to give Kalani Sitake, our head coach there, most of the credit, because he's the one that's really forged the identity of that team. But I really feel like for us as an offense, we had to struggle through a little bit of a growth phase there. But I think this year certainly was sort of the time that those building blocks that we've been putting in place, particularly the things in terms of the culture and identity that we were trying to build, really began to come to light this year.
Zach Wilson, your quarterback, great season for him. Tell me if I've got this right. You were there when he was a young quarterback, and you sort of gave him an opportunity even when he was very young in the program, and look where he came from there to where he is now. What is that correct? I mean,
yeah,
starting him early?
Yeah, and Zach's an interesting part of this. His dad and I were just talking yesterday, and then I've been in touch with Zach as I was making this transition as well. But man, I can't say enough about what kind of player and leader and young man he is. But Zach and I came to BYU really at the same time.
Okay.
When Kalani first talked to me about the job, we were talking about the players on our team, and he said, and there's this quarterback who's still in high school that I think I'm going to be able to get, but I want you to help me recruit him, because he needs to know what our offense is going to look like and wants to talk to the new coordinator. At the time, he had been committed to Boise State, and so I right away jumped on and looked at his film, and I said, yeah, I love this kid. Just a tremendous athlete, incredible arm talent and natural accuracy, but was just obviously fresh senior in high school then. And so the day that I flew to Utah, this day of the day that I'm having right here, first day on the new job, right. Zach was at BYU on an official visit. And so I got to spend some time with him and his parents then, and then shortly thereafter he committed and then showed up on campus. But I'll tell you, a lot of people have told me, what a year Zach has had, but he wasn't always that. He grew into that. He became that kind of player. He wasn't a guy that was heavily recruited necessarily. But he always had that something special, that thing that you look for in your quarterback and your leader. And so, yes, we did give him an opportunity early. He did not win the starting job right away. We had an experienced player who won the job, and then halfway through the season we decided to make a change, and then he took off. Had a tremendous end of that freshman season, went 18 for 18 in the bowl game that we played, and then had shoulder surgery that really set him back his sophomore year, and then got hurt again, messed up his thumb, had to have surgery on that. So his sophomore year was really one that was frustrating for him, not at full strength, and then this year came back full strength and played as well as any quarterback I've ever seen.
Wow. Great history there of developing a younger quarterback. You may have that opportunity here at Baylor. This is not really a fair question, but do you know what you're inheriting with the Baylor offense here?
Yeah, one of the first things I did is evaluate the quarterbacks, because I don't think you want to go anywhere where you don't have a guy who can do that thing. Yeah, I mean, it's like it'd be like taking a job as a basketball coach and you didn't have a point guard.
Right.
But yeah, I have evaluated those guys before I even really went very far into the process with Dave, and am excited about having an opportunity to begin getting to know those guys. I've already talked to them on the phone, and they're telling me how they've been watching BYU offense, and hey, when can I get a playbook and get to work? So they're chomping at the bit, and so am I.
That's great. Part of you evaluating Baylor, Baylor evaluates you in the same respect, and you evaluate Coach Daveranda, the head coach you'll be working with here. Tell us about your relationship with Dave that goes back to LSU and maybe further back than that.
Yeah, no, really, our time at LSU was our first time to really get to know each other. And, I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in Daveranda. And enjoyed getting to know him there. And, when you're on opposite sides of the ball, sometimes you don't really get to know each other all that well. But I knew something about Dave even before he came, because we had played against each other the previous year when he was at Wisconsin and I was at LSU, and he beat us, and had great respect for his defenses there. And then when he came, I saw why he was so good. His attention to detail, the ability that he had to connect with players and their respect for him and his knowledge made an immediate impact on our defense there at LSU, and just really struggled to make first downs against him in practice. And so really respected him as a coach, but also very much enjoyed getting to know him as a person and his family, and just really appreciated the way that he treated people. And you can see that here already, just in me talking with a lot of the other people on the staff here. Even before I came, their love for him because of the way that he's treated people.
You were the offensive line coach there at LSU. A great history coaching the offensive line for you in your profession. How much does that influence, that background with the offensive line, how much does that influence now what you do as a coordinator?
A great deal. I always, even in the years that I was coaching offensive line, I still tried to see the game with a wide lens. I always tried to see the big picture and saw myself doing something beyond just not just being the offensive line coach, but something different. But it all really starts up front. It does. It's kind of like having a big brother. The younger brother will follow the big brother anywhere that he goes. Right? I got two dogs. I got one that's a big dog and all muscled up, and I got another little dog that's about 20 pounds. And there's a there's another dog, a couple dogs that live in the yard behind us. And so when my little dog goes out in the backyard, she only makes it about halfway before she starts barking at the other dog, but she won't go any further than that until the big guy comes out. And when he comes out, then he runs right over there and they talk to the other dogs. But then she'll go all the way up to the fence and then she'll speak her mind a little bit. It's kind of like that with the offensive line. You know, if those guys will lead the charge, they're the tip of the spear. They're the first ones off the boats when you're landing to storm the beach. And if those guys do that with a tough, physical, confident, aggressive mindset, then everything else on offense works. And Zach Wilson would be the first to tell you, or our running back Tyler Algier, who had a phenomenal year this year at BYU. Any of those guys would tell you that their job doesn't happen if the linemen don't do their job first up front. So I will put a lot of pressure and put a lot of pressure on them and expect a lot out of them in return.
Going back to your playing days at UTEP and then through a 28-year coaching career, you've been around some terrific coaches, assistants you've worked with, head coaches you've worked with. What's your coaching DNA? Who's your mentor? Who have you learned from that has really impacted what you do now?
Wow. How long do we have?
We got plenty of time.
that could last for a while. I've been really, really, really blessed. So fortunate to have been around so many good coaches, and I'll just try to mention a few. You know, I would start with a couple of guys that coached me when I was young. There was a guy when I was in high school named Jack Catlett who coached me on the junior varsity level and then the varsity level too. But he was the first guy that I felt like who really, truly cared about the success that I had. And I remember him taking me after practice, just me and him, and working on blocking. And that meant something to me. Those moments of him, because that wasn't what he was being paid for. He cared enough about me as an individual to keep me by himself and just work with me on something. And so, you know, that's something that I still try to do, to take a guy for a few extra minutes and spend that individual time with him can make all the difference in the world. A guy that I played for, and I'll mention a couple guys that I played for in college at UTEP. I was blessed to have had Andy Reid as my offensive line coach for 2 years in college, and wow, what a blessing that was. And at the time, it was a blessing because he helped me become a better player. But now I recognize that he's contributed to who I am as a coach, and he had great knowledge of the game, obviously. I don't think any player respects a coach that doesn't have information that he needs. But the even larger thing is he had the ability to push me really, really hard and do it in such a way that I wanted to do better, rather than resent him for that. And I just remember him a couple times just really yelling at me and looking at me with these eyes, and it made me want to do better. And I think that's because I knew he cared about me and because he had invested in me. And he's someone that I still stay in touch with. We stole a play from the Chiefs this year. I'll steal a play from anybody, but we stole a play that the Chiefs scored a touchdown on with Travis Kelce, and a number of people who were watching our game noticed the play and showed the two plays on social media afterwards, and I texted him and said, I guess I should have asked for your permission first. And he said, no, man, I'm just glad it worked for you. But he's a phenomenal person and a great coach, and I'm blessed to have him as somebody that is still making an impact on me. Another guy that was on that same coaching staff was Dirk Cutter, who's the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, most recently been the head coach of the Bucks. So he was my offensive coordinator for a couple of years in college, and then he hired me in 2000 as his offensive line coach to Boise State, and then I followed him and spent 3 years with him at Arizona State as well. And in those years, I feel like I kind of attained the hardware that I needed to really understand how to run an offense, how to game plan, how to spend a week working on an opponent, how to practice, how many plays you need for 1st and 10, and how many plays you need on 3rd and 1, and the importance of balance within your offense. And so a lot of those real technical things that you need to know as a coach, I really got from him, and probably got from him more than I've received from anyone else over the years. Wow, just so many people I could mention. Frank Beamer, I worked for at Virginia Tech for a little while towards the end of his career, but was still just so impressed by his command of the game, his attention to detail. Great story on him. So he was still at that point in charge of the special teams himself. He ran them himself, ran the meetings, coached the long snappers himself during practice, and I'll never forget, he's the first guy out on the practice field every day, and he's out there on the practice field not with the all-stars of the team. He's out there with the young guys who are going to serve as the scout squad, the look team, for his punt team that day or his punt return team that day. And he was standing out there with his cards, simulation cards for the opposing punt team or punt return team, and he's walking through those looks, so he made sure that he got them right in practice that day. And that attention to detail and that commitment to excellence is why he's been such a great coach, obviously. But I could name many more, but that's just a few with a few stories. But I think, all of us are, to some extent, a product of our environments, and if you're smart enough, then you take a little bit of each piece along the way. And Woodrow Wilson said, I don't use only all the brains that I have, but all that I can borrow. And I think I'm really a product of a lot of people.
Nuts and bolts, your philosophy, your coaching philosophy for an offense. Can you boil that down and share that with us?
Yeah, I definitely can. So I think it starts with the culture more than anything else. And so what I've called my offense here of late is RVO, and that little acronym, RVO, is kind of a play on words, not to be confused with RPO. RPO, which stands for run pass option. Most people know that now, and that's a commonly used set of plays within most offenses, and we certainly have RPOs in our system as well. But more importantly is what that really stands for, and it stands for reliable, violent offense. Because I think there are a lot of ways that you can run plays. Again, we run RPOs, we have zone read, we have vertical throws down the field, play action, drop back, quick game, zone plays, a lot of things that a lot of other people do. What's most important is how you run those plays, because there are a lot of systems out there that can be effective. What makes an offense really go is their ability to execute those things at a higher level than the defense that you're playing against. And so the first part of that, just the reliability, means that you're able to be trusted. You can do things consistently good. And I think if you looked at our season last year, there are a lot of stats, and you mentioned a couple earlier, but some of the stats that I'm most pleased with are the things that a lot of people don't notice, but they keep you from losing a game first. Things like penalties. We were one of the top teams in the country in committing the fewest penalties. I think we were 8th in the country in giveaways, the number of times that we fumbled or threw interceptions, missed assignments, those things that beat you first. I think the first thing an offense needs to do is not beat yourself. If you don't beat yourself, then you give yourself a chance to win the game. If you can't even do those things properly, then you're not even giving yourself a chance. And those things are no talent issues. Those things don't take any talent. It doesn't take any talent to line up in the right spot, to get off on the right count and do your job. The next part, playing with a violent, aggressive mindset, is something that a lot of other teams can't do. See, a lot of offenses can do one of those things or the other. They can play violently and they can play with aggression, but they do it in a reckless fashion, and so they can't be reliable or consistent enough to go score points the way you need to. Then there's some other teams that are pretty disciplined, but they don't play with that edge. They don't play with that aggression and that toughness. And this is a physical game that's won by physical men who are willing to play with that edge, with that violence. And so whether you're talking about running the football with a violent physical nature, or whether you're talking about throwing the football down the field, or for a quarterback getting hit in the face and then popping right back up for the next play, that's playing with violence. And so that mindset is the most important thing that we'll attempt to bring to the table. The next thing I would say, if you look at it from a more tactical approach, is my offense is really defined in this statement. We're an attacking, multiple formation offense that runs a few plays, a lot of ways, with as much misdirection as anyone in the country. And that's something that I hope all of our players will begin to learn very soon.
Right.
But we're going to attack people. We're going to do it in a multiple fashion, so we can go fast, we can go slow, we can shift, we can motion, we can set the ball down and go, we can check plays. So there'll be a variety of presentations for a defense, lining up in various formations, but running similar plays in a lot of different ways. And I think that's what really leads to that execution that's at the end of what you can do, hopefully better than other people can.
Boy, that's great. Sign me up.
All right.
I'm on board with you.
Let's go.
Final thought, you're from the state of Texas. You're a native of Garland, Texas. You've recruited here before. Now you're recruiting for a school right in the heart of Texas like Baylor. It's obvious you have the passion to do that job for Baylor with Daveranda, with the staff here. It sounds like it's just a great fit, I guess is what I'm saying, for you to be here at Baylor at this time.
I couldn't, when Dave and I started talking about this, my wife Sherry and I start talking about it a little bit more, and we just said, I don't know that there could be a better fit for all of the reasons that we've already discussed. I'm just thrilled to be here, and it is an amazing fit in every way that you can imagine. And so I couldn't imagine a place that I would be more excited to be than I am in Waco, Texas, right here today.
Man, that's great. Well, we are glad to have you and Sherry and Bailey and Jada and Garrison and Graydon. We're glad to have them.
You got them all.
Glad to have you all here, and welcome to the Baylor family, and look forward to working with you for many years to come.
Hey, you too. Sick 'em.